The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
CJ, preseason underway. Games are back. Hockey's back. How are we feeling?
I almost had to rub my eyes over the weekend because, yes, I'm still old school. I still have cable. So clicking through the channels a bit and seeing actual, at least it might not be the real thing of NHL hockey, but it's lots of players wearing the real jerseys in the real buildings with fans. And it's the start of, the long march through a season. So it's cool that it's back in some form. I mean, you were at a game on Sunday. I didn't actually catch any of that Leafs Senators game. I had some family commitments, but what was the vibe like? What did it feel like to go back into the arena and watch a game?
It felt good, man. Like, I remember walking in, saying hi to everybody, all the security staff, all the training staff, everybody. It felt like a real proper first day back at school. I know training camp is supposed to feel like that, but I don't know. There was something really great. That was my first Sens preseason game, by the way.
Oh, wow. You missed all last year.
Exactly. I don't think I got to do any preseason games last year.
You get to my stage of your career and you just don't go to preseason games. Full stop. But
I don't know how long I'll have to wait until that. Maybe another 20 years at the earliest. I know you're kidding. But I liked it. No, you go ahead.
Did you learn anything? This is I feel like in training camp, we're always doing this game, right? Because we know it matters. I certainly don't want to, but you're sort of weighing, and maybe this will help us frame up some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. But how much does it matter? Does it really I think we're always doing that game. Is this real, what we're watching? What were your takeaways from the game itself?
You should, for people who want to know takeaways, go to The Athletic on that. But for the purpose of this podcast, Travis Green throughout a good chunk of this camp has been don't read too much into the lines. But you have Tkachuk, Stützle, and Giroux as your top line in your first preseason game. The one preseason game you have in Ottawa throughout the entirety of preseason. That's at the very least an option. Maybe that could be their top line to start the year. Nicholas Montempallo's playing with Thomas Chabot. He might be their number 7 defenseman because Nick Jensen might be healthy. Nick Jensen's been skating the last few days. I have a couple different ones. And then there's number 35. There's the goalie. I want to start with him because I don't know if you saw a couple of days ago, he spoke to us in the media and we asked him what his assessment of training camp has been like for him. And he felt like he had a pretty terrible showing in 2 days into camp, which I was kind of surprised by. And I get that he holds himself to a very high standard. If I'm Steve Staios, if I'm the Sens, I don't know if I want to hear that from my $33 million goaltender. And then the very first game he plays in preseason, 3 goals on 8 shots. I think 2 of those goals, not his fault. But it's a stinker. And he admitted as such yesterday. I was curious if you had seen those initial comments I mentioned earlier about him saying he's had a pretty terrible showing at camp. To me, I don't want to hear that if I'm the Senators. I'm curious to know what you think.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, this is a story. This isn't one I'll just throw away as okay, it's training camp and we waste time on sometimes things that don't matter. I think this does matter. Linus Ullmark, he certainly had a tough start to that series against the Leafs last year. He was much better towards the end of it. But still, at the end of his 6-game series, he's got an .880 save percentage. An up and down season last year. I think the position's up and down, to be fair. It's not even the Hall of Fame goaltenders of our past. It's not a consistent performance every game. It's highly volatile in terms of what the numbers and the performance is. But, it's just him saying it out loud. And look, I think we always want honesty in our job. So this is where, we're towing a sort of a delicate line and then turning his words against him because it's not really my intent. I think it is a window into how he's feeling. Right. And so the fact to me that last year didn't end on the note that he wanted to, it was passed over entirely by Sweden for World Championships in Stockholm, a tournament, that he made clear he wanted to go to. As an established player, someone who's won a Vezina, it's kind of unusual that you're not getting that kind of invite. And then to start off this camp this way, I would have very small C concern because there's it could literally mean nothing. You could have like 2 great more preseason games and then throw a shutout on opening night in the regular season, and no one's even thinking about this. But, I think because of where we're at and kind of the arc this guy's on and how important he is to the Senators, let's not look past that. As you mentioned, big contract there. To me, this is a real story. Just how this develops, what Ullmark's demeanor is. Almost, to me, it's the progression matters now. Like how is he feeling in a few days' time? When does he play again? He only played 1 period against the Leafs in that opener. Do they want to give him a half a game or a full game? What would he prefer? Because I did read the comment after the game where he's like, well, maybe if I had played the whole game and I stopped the next 20 shots, it's a good night. And he's right. Mm-hmm. Like I'm actually not taking issue with the logic there, but this guy is now on my radar. Is like, what's going on here? Is this just a little blip in September that doesn't matter, or is this the start of something bigger? And to me, that alone, the fact it could go either way, certainly to me makes it a story. I mean, what say you as a guy with boots on the ground in Ottawa?
Like, you're right. One good preseason game, if it's the very next one, we forget about that Sunday first period game.
It's his own words, though. That's to me, that's the blinking red light there, right?
Yep. Oh yeah. I'm right there with you.
I'm not looking through box scores this morning from all those preseason games going like, oh my God, this star player was -3 in this preseason game.
I was there hearing him say he felt he was terrible in his first few games. And I heard Travis Green after the fact say, I think he's being a little hard on himself. Right. But there's being hard on yourself and then kind of brutally self-assessing yourself. I will say this though. I thought he handled himself after Sunday's game with a little bit more confidence. Like he kind of he looked at that first period and he said, well, you know what? It's a good time to get that stinker out of the way. And then we'll see how it goes rest of preseason and regular season and what have you. Like better you have that now. And then from that point on, if he has a progression, then we look at him a little bit differently. But if he has another bad preseason outing,
it could start to snowball a little bit.
That's it. That's when the red light comes on, I think, for me. And even if it is preseason, I want my number one goaltender to look sharper than what we may have seen so far. But again, I also think he might be being a little hard on himself. And I still think, I know you didn't watch the game, but to give you a sense of what the 3 goals he allowed were like, first goal.
I saw the Kelly Yarncroke goal, the first one.
Drive to the net. Nick Cousins is on him, doesn't stop him. Pretty good power move. Nick Robertson scores the second. Really great shot from the half wall that just beats Linus Ullmark. And then the third one, I was ready to give him the benefit of the doubt on because Tyler Clevin is standing in front of him and even sticks out his hand to try to stop the puck. But when I asked Linus about it, he said he saw the puck. So I was like, okay, well, if you saw it, then fine. Maybe that is on you. But again, 2 out of those 3 goals, I don't think you could attribute to him being bad. I think it was more just those shots beat him. It is what it is.
But let's look at the bigger picture too, because for me, Ullmark's in a pretty small class of goalie now in the sort of current way that teams deploy these guys, that he truly is the number one, right? Like there's, a lot of camps around the league in a weird way. If one of your goalies is really kind of off to, there's a little less concern because most teams now are almost 50-50 with their players. But, basically the guys that make what Ullmark make are in that class on their own, right? You've got Swayman is meant to be number one. He's in the $8 million range. Ottinger, Swayman, Ullmark rather. Then you've got Vasilevsky left over. But I mean, we're down to Hellebuck. I don't think there's more than 10 true number one goalies in the league anymore. Like where those guys are sort of expected to start 50 to maybe at the high end 60 games for their teams. Most of the rest of the league, it's a tandem situation, but there's a lot riding on, I guess. And obviously with that comes pressure and expectation. I don't think anyone probably puts more on himself than Ullmark. I mean, this guy, he's got a long track record of success. You go back and look through his save percentages. I mean, he's been well above league average most of his career, with very few sort of dips. Even last year, 9-10 was quite a bit above what the league average was. So, he's got a lot of reasons to be confident is all I'm saying. He earned that contract that he's getting paid on, but he's got to live up to it. And I'm not necessarily tying this to him being worried about the money, but it just, the alarm bells go off for me because, this is a year, obviously the Sens are looking to build on last season. And, he's a big part of that. He's not the only part of it, but he's, everything else could go right. And if your goaltending goes wrong, I mean, it's hard to overcome that in a season. So he's without putting too fine a point on it, he's a critical part of this team. And just to see him start the camp this way gives me a little bit of like, ooh, a little shudder. But as I said, I don't want to make too much positively or negatively of any story at this point. Like some guy we've never heard of is going to score 4 goals in 3 preseason games, and we're not going to say he's he's in the mix for the Rocket this year. And I think similarly we don't want to be guilty of going too far the other way too. But Ullmark for me it's actually one of the training camp storylines that I really think it's a real one, and I'm glad you're there to cover it, my friend.
Well, I do want to add this too. We're not that far off from the days where goaltending was the Ottawa Senators' Achilles heel. If you look at the years where they missed the playoffs, and I mean, no shade to Anton Forsberg, who I think did well enough last year. He was a part of some of those teams where the goaltending just was not good enough post Craig Anderson. So I think the anxiety around a guy like Linus Ullmark, which I think maybe some people might have felt even before some of those comments came around, I can understand where that's coming from certain Sens fans. And if it doesn't work for Linus Ullmark, Levi Merilainen is the backup, who he played well in the small handful of games he played last year, but his workload's going to go up this year. And then after him is Mads Sogard, who played in relief of Linus Ullmark yesterday. He allowed a pretty bad goal. He was good otherwise, but I don't know if he's at a point where he's inspired enough confidence. I still have questions about the Senators' goaltending depth as a whole. Like, Levi Merilainen, again, showed promise last year, but if it doesn't work with him for whatever reason, he's been great in camp. I don't think there's been any reason to suggest it won't. But if it doesn't work with Ullmark and you're increasing the workload for Merilainen and it doesn't work, that's a position that could fall like a house of cards for the Sens. I also realize
they needed to work with Ullmark. Let's just
they needed to work.
And
yes.
Look, I'm actually not down on the other 2 players. They're younger. There's reason to have hope for them.
Right.
But it's a big step from saying, hey, they're capable NHL goalies to fill in to carrying the load. So, I mean, there's really no way around the fact that it's got to work with Ullmark, or you're looking externally for solutions. And again, we're not there yet, so I don't want to. Nope. I'm trying to strike the right chord here because I'm not smashing the panic button, but I am definitely going that's something to watch over there. That seems like that could be a storyline that persists.
Oh, yeah, we'll be following that. Let's move on from Linus Ullmark. I thought about your comment about, hey, there's going to be some guy who scored 4 goals in 3 games that we've never heard of. Less so on the goal-scoring part, more on the guy we've never heard of. I had to look up who David Tomasek was last week. I don't cover the Oilers, but he started camp playing alongside Connor McDavid and another new guy, Andrew Mangiapane. Still going to be a bit of a while before I picture Andrew Mangiapane as an Edmonton Oiler. You got to forgive me, Oilers fans, on this one. But that's not the line I expect to see with Connor McDavid to start off a season. I try to take it with a grain of salt, training camp lines, but still weird considering the stakes surrounding Connor McDavid. Am I bigging this up too much? Is this a non-story?
No, this is a story for me as well. And not in the sense that I think David Tomasek is going to spend any meaningful amount of time on Connor McDavid's wing all year long. I mean, look, part of the reason they're lining up that way to start camp is because Zach Hyman, is still recovering from the broken wrist and won't be back till November. So, they're already missing a key winger who would most likely be playing alongside Connor McDavid in a world where he was healthy. So I think there's some, extenuating circumstances, but it also kind of underlines some of, the thoughts I think Connor McDavid's had about the team, right? And in terms of its ability to be a contender down the road. I mean, it's just a little thin beyond the players. There's not a next wave of players really coming. Now they're hoping, of course, they traded for Isaac Howard in the offseason. They got Matt Savoy. They are hoping that there's a few younger players, don't get me wrong, but there's not a big push here within the Oilers organization for these spots. And so, look, it's possible this becomes one of the great stories because you hadn't heard of David Tomasek. I mean, they announced that signing during the playoffs last year. He's got basically 10 years of pro experience all over Europe. If you look, he's been in the KHL, he's been in Finland, he's played all over the place and put up pretty good numbers. And perhaps, at least you're putting someone on Connor McDavid's wing who's played a lot of pro hockey. So, the NHL is certainly a step up, but this is an established professional adult male player. You're not counting on a teenager, for example, to just jump right in. But, I do think it says a little bit about where the Oilers are at in this point in time, in terms of depth in their organization. And so, I do believe, Travis Green is funny. He's telling you not to pay attention to lines. Like, I will say, looking around the league, and I didn't see every set of lines in every team, I think more and more teams are starting with lines in camp that look like what they think their first line will be. Now, it doesn't mean it won't change. Like, maybe it doesn't work in camp and then they start switching it around. But I think you do read into that because they had all summer to look at their team, to consider the pros and cons of any decision, and they roll out a certain line. I mean, there you go. And look, what a great chance for Andrew Mangiapane. I mean, he's been a goal scorer, had some big seasons in Calgary. I know was using a little different role last year in Washington and didn't have that level of production where he's been, but he's not even 30 yet. Playing alongside Connor McDavid, it's not unrealistic to think that he could get back to some levels of production that you've seen from him in the past. But I think it kind of, in a weird way, underscores some of the reticence on McDavid's end to sign that contract. And we don't need to hammer all over that story again, because I think we've covered that from every possible angle and nothing's changed, is my understanding where things are at today. But, that is a story because it sort of tells you what's going on without telling you what's going on. The fact he could even be lining up with someone, Julian, that until last week you weren't sure who that player was.
This is just my opinion. If it gets to a point where Connor McDavid does not re-sign or sign short-term and then leaves, I'm pretty sure we go back to him starting with the line mates he has, even if Zach Hyman is not healthy. We go back to it.
Sure. I think, and we go back to those offer sheets of the summer of 2024 and the fact that Dylan Holloway isn't there. And they lost two players to St. Louis. That would be the kind of players that I think, a healthy organization. It's tough. Any team that's been trying to win for a long time eventually ends up in a spot. Like, Edmonton isn't necessarily unique. It's just they're unique because they're trying to sign Connor McDavid right now. But all the teams that have been sort of contending for a while are trading away their picks, and you end up with an organization that's a little short on prospects. I mean, look at the prospect rankings we do at The Athletic every year, right? I mean, it's almost the inverse of what the standings have been. I mean, most of the teams that have actually been winning cups or had a chance to win the Stanley Cup are in the 20s down to 32. And then, the teams that haven't won very many games, and stockpiled all those picks at the top. I mean, it's kind of a normal cycle, I guess. It's just, it's a key part of the decision-making for Connor is figuring out if they can still have one more cycle and that he's going to sign his contract there. And so, I'm not trying to by any means place this on David Tomasek. I mean, maybe it becomes a great story. I mean, it could go that way too. But generally speaking, there's a reason why players, who haven't played in the NHL by age 27 or whatever he is, doesn't mean that there's not a lot of secrets in the hockey world anymore, in the world at large now. And it's unlikely that everyone's been missing something there. But, look, they might have found a solid NHL player that they can add just for the price of his contract. And when you're in the cycle the Oilers are in, that's valuable too. So, I'm open-minded to that outcome, but I do think it tells us kind of a larger story, what's going on there.
I share your optimism. Can I bring up another story in the province of Alberta that I took notice of this weekend? Jonathan Huberdeau missed a practice over the weekend, and he was asked about it by media. It seemed like it was just a maintenance day, but he told everyone he just woke up and he didn't feel like skating. If you watch the clip, everyone's laughing. Everyone's having a laugh about it. It's his patented dry humor. But of course, because it's Jonathan Huberdeau and he is on the contract that he's on, there are people who are losing their minds about it. I'm not saying everyone is, but I've seen that kind of made the rounds about it. What did you think of those comments?
Well, let's stamp that one a non-story. That this is what I'll call a training camp story, where it's like, okay, I get it. Everyone's got to fill quotas every day, file stories, discuss the team, and sometimes there's not a whole lot going on. So maybe that ended up taking on a life of its own. But trust me, there's no way. I don't think players of his caliber go to the rink and be like, I don't feel like skating today, and then don't skate. I'm sure there was more to it from the maintenance side of things. I mean, look, there actually, I mean, this is another part of camp that there's a lot of injuries and they're all being described as minor, but you do get a lot of sort of groin tweaks. And, as much as these are highly attuned athletes who, for the most part, skate almost year round nowadays, the pace that starts from camp on, the body starts feeling things right for them. And so, Jonathan Huberdeau is hardly unique in that I've noticed a lot of teams will have these 4 players are sitting out today's practice with minor injuries or minor maintenance situations. And so let's calm down there, internet. I know that's that could be a forever meme. Let's calm down, internet. But anyone who's trying to like make that into something it's not, I think you're Gumby, right? You're stretching in all kinds of directions, trying to turn that into something that really is kind of a non-issue.
Gumby wasn't that like a 90s or 80s show? Like I've seen like Gumby around, but I might have been too late for Gumby.
I don't even know if it was a show. You used to actually get the figurines and you could just bend them. Basically, they were like bendy bodies. You could bend them in any direction. So, just a clap back to my youth there, my friend.
I forget that you're a young person. I'm kidding. I mean, you're relatively young. You're relatively young. I'm not gonna dox your age online. Any other storylines worth mentioning before I ask you about some RFA stuff?
No, probably the bigger storylines, the ones that are percolating under the league, are all the we could put under a contract header, and I suspect that's where you're taking us here next.
Yeah, I just want to kind of shake the trees on guys like Mason McTavish or Luke Evangelista or Luke Hughes, as we mentioned a couple days ago. Is there anything new on those situations? Sure.
So let's deal with those 3 kind of in a group, because they are restricted free agents with very little rights. And it's good to underline this, because now we're almost a week into camps, and they're effectively there's not much they can do without a contract other than not participate and hope that the teams, want to engage in a way that gets them to a deal that they're willing to sign. I think it's interesting that both Mason McTavish, who was in Anaheim, flew back to Ontario, has been skating with the Ottawa 67s. Luke Evangelista over the weekend was in Nashville, flew back to the Toronto area where he's from. That's kind of a step, right? It's a sign that I was in position, ready to do a deal to be at the first day of work when training camp started. And it tells us that things aren't going too well in the negotiations when a player then leaves the market to go elsewhere while things go on. And so, I continue to think the Evangelista one is the most unusual of all of these, only because the relative amount of money between the 2 positions is pretty small. They're talking about a 2-year contract for Luke Evangelista. And the Predators are offering somewhere in the 2-year range at $2 million. He's countering at like 3.25. I gather that's real money, and most of us would love to be in that kind of negotiation. It's not a case where they're arguing 6 and 7 and 8 year deals where the total value, there could be 10 million between the sides over those long-term deals. And it's hard to solve that problem. I mean, it generally is pretty easy to solve these problems. And then you have this player, flying back now into Ontario. I mean, it's a little bit of a weird one. Nashville's a team that doesn't have any cap issues. They've had trouble developing their own players there. And so obviously he could count as a positive side of that. It just, that one's more surprising. Whereas, the McTavish Anaheim situation, as I detailed in our last show, it's big money when you're talking long-term deals for him. He does have some pretty strong comparables, and the sides just aren't in the same ballpark. It doesn't sound like there's really been a whole lot of movement. Now that can change pretty quickly in a negotiation. And really that's the stage all 3 of these players find themselves in is the pressure starts to mount, right? On both sides of the equation. Don't get me wrong. You saw Pat Verbeek make comments in the media in Anaheim talking about, McTavish is going to be behind now. Like these days in camp are important. And I do think history shows that. I mean, it's tough for players to miss all or part of camp and jump in and be ready. But this is the one area of the CBA I find players kind of get in the no man's land before they have arbitration rights. There's no way to force a deal, right? The only way is to take what the players deem to be a bad deal if they want to get back to work, or don't show up to work and hope that the teams miss them or start to feel their own pressure, whether it's from ownership or what have you. But right now, there doesn't seem to be a lot of pressure. I mean, we're talking about this, but I don't get the sense, there's not like people in each of these markets going crazy yet. And so these guys might have to sit a while and just kind of have to see where everything lands.
Okay, one more signing question, and this is with a UFA and not an RFA. We're recording this podcast on Monday, September 22nd, and Jack Roslovic still hasn't signed. What gives?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of a cautionary tale, I'd say. And back when I was doing the free agent board leading into July 1st, Julian, I don't actually remember where I had him, but I certainly had him in the top 50. And I think in somewhere around 20th or so. Like he was, reasonably high. I mean, Jack Roslovic's a player, can play the center position. I know the Hurricanes liked him, even had him last year, but just felt like they weren't going to be able to pay him what he needed to be paid. And then lo and behold, we are here, camps around the league well underway, and he hasn't signed anywhere. And I look back to that first day of free agency, and this is where it can be musical chairs. Like my understanding is he had offers of the 2 and 3 year range, 3.5 to 3.75 million. Obviously didn't take those offers. You're hoping something better is going to come along, but July 1st becomes July 4th, becomes July 10th. You get into August, and then the kind of offers that Jack Roslovic are getting are lower. And that's really just because I believe the money got spent on other players. Those offers that were there for him at the start of free agency dry up because players like Andrew Mangiapane sign or other guys in that sort of range of contract I'm mentioning. And then so the kind of offers he can get in August looks a little worse. It's like 2 years times $2.5 million, I think, is about where he was at. Then you get into September, and even 2-year deals are hard to come by. And so, it's been a struggle for this player. He's had to change agents, or he's chosen to change agents over the summer as well. And, I don't know enough to say like who's at fault here. I'm not saying he made a mistake, but it is a cautionary tale in that's why so many players frankly sign on July 1st or 2nd, because after those first couple days, generally speaking, it gets quiet and the money, again, generally speaking, goes down. There's been some, outliers. I remember a few years ago, Nazem Kadri, before he got his big deal in Calgary, like he was on the market for a couple weeks. But in general, the players who sign bigger money free agent deals in the NHL, it's got to happen in the first 2 days or you're cooked. It's a function of, I guess, the cap. It's a function of that's the way everyone's accustomed to doing business. It's such a scramble at the start of free agency. And so I think he's just a player that kind of fell through the cracks a bit, got squeezed, maybe didn't like the teams. And then all of a sudden you're kind of chasing it a little bit. And so, we'll see if he's able to get a multi-year deal. I think he'd like some security, but he might ultimately find himself in a position, in a prove it position. And I think certainly will have left some total dollars on the table by the time he signs wherever he signs here, to play the season. And then he's got to try to earn that back. I mean, a big season and maybe next summer is much kinder to him. And it actually, you'll look at it and go like, hey, that worked out in his favor. But right now it's been a tough summer for Jack Roslovic. And you can only imagine the stress you might be feeling, especially him. Like we're talking about a proven NHL player. And right now, he hasn't missed a paycheck yet. Players only get paid during the regular season. So, he hasn't actually lost anything, but, I think he's lost the ability to sign in his next city, move there comfortably, settle in, start camp with his new teammates, get accustomed. This is going to be sort of not the way you would have drawn it up when he lands somewhere. And I just think it's got to be a matter of time before he signs somewhere. But the offers went down on a sliding scale for him. And, unfortunately, whether fair or not, he's going to have to prove himself again, I think, to get the kind of contract he was looking for originally back in July.
I wonder what teams would be open to giving him that prove it deal. Like I'm automatically going to think of the Ottawa Senators and think of what they might want to do with their top 6. I don't know if that's someone who might fit there. They definitely have salary cap space to make like a cheap deal work. Is this someone maybe the Leafs could be or should be interested in? I'm wondering which teams might show interest at this point.
Well, I mean, I'd look at the teams that need a center, as at least possibilities. Now he doesn't solve necessarily the long term. Like I'm not sure you're slotting him in as a number 2 center on a good team. So obviously Montreal is a team that's talked about looking for a center. They're looking for a center in Vancouver. I think these teams have been around Roslovic at various points. I don't know if he ends up landing somewhere like that. I don't see the Leafs as being as much a fit right now, just because if anything, they have too many forwards in camp, and they're probably facing a scenario at some point before, getting into the season where, a forward or maybe two are on the move somewhere. I mean, it could just be through waivers, could be being sent down the American Hockey League, but I don't see them necessarily being in an adding position this moment. But the other factor to consider here is injuries could necessitate some decisions too. And something could happen today in a practice or in one of the preseason games that gets played tonight that changes the view of how teams approach this. And that's probably what you're banking on if you're in Roslovic's camp, is that because he plays a position that basically very few teams feel great about their depth at center, right? I mean, even the good teams always are kind of looking for another third liner at that position. That tends to be, a trade deadline. The kind of players that get picked up are good teams looking to add a little depth on their blue line or a third line center or maybe a right shot. So, I certainly think that he fits a need for those teams, but the price point on his end of the equation, I think, is just not going to be the same as what was available to him July 1st, unless something very strange comes around. But, tough summer for him, and we'll see where he ends up.
Okay. We'll keep an eye out for Jack Roslovic. One more thing before we get to Ask CJ. Anze Kopitar. Pretty big week in LA last week. I mean, Clayton Kershaw pitching his final game at Dodger Stadium in the regular season, and then Anze Kopitar announcing that his upcoming 20th season will be his last in the NHL. Any thoughts on Anze Kopitar hanging it up after this season?
I've got a lot of thoughts. I mean, what are the odds, though, that the day Kopitar announces that basically this is his farewell season is the same day Kershaw announces it's the end of his time with the Dodgers? In that marketplace, I saw Kopitar had kind of a quip at his press conference. He's like, just the way I like it, I'll be under the radar then. And what a quietly spectacular career this guy's had, right? I mean, he played through essentially the advent of social media. He played through a loud era in pro sports, but we'll call it a loud era for the NHL. And for the most part, escaped a lot of recognition. And that kind of, I want to juxtapose that with the idea now that we know this is his final season. And so it could actually get, I don't know if loud is the right way to put it, but I think that he's going to do a little bit of a farewell tour here. I would think that as he goes around the league, certain teams may choose to honor him, even just a quick, clap of the sticks at the first TV timeout when he's playing in the certain arenas for the last time. This isn't something we see in hockey too often, quite frankly. I mean, we got it a little bit with Marc-Andre Fleury last year, where he was openly talking about it being his last season. And so obviously when he played his last game in Montreal, when he played in Pittsburgh for the final time, although of course, as we know now, he's got one more game to come on a PTO, in Pittsburgh this week. But, all being aside, I mean, he did kind of get that tour last year, but most NHL players, if either don't declare it, maybe they don't know it, but I think this sets up as kind of an interesting time to see what this looks like, how other teams might honor him. I think of like Mariano Rivera when he ended his baseball career. He was going into when he reached each city for the last time. He was like meeting members of the teams that he played against, like staff that, like, for example, when he came to Toronto for the last time, he like met with Jay's staff, and most of those teams honored him, gave him a gift. I don't know how this will go, but it's for me, it's not necessarily new, but it's certainly not common in the NHL. And I think it will give us a chance maybe to send this guy off the right way, because for so long, he's just been quietly awesome. Like even the last two seasons, I believe he basically 70-point player the last couple of years. Even this deep into his career, just a two-way beast. For those Kings teams, won 2 Stanley Cups. Obviously for a lot of years was in the Selke conversation. He's won the Lady Byng a few times, just a gentleman of the sport. I mean, it's, to me, it's a career that's taken him straight to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 3 years' time. I think he'll be a first ballot guy for me.
Absolutely.
But the fact that we get this send off here, I mean, how well does he play? Can he have another 70-point season? Can anything happen that'll make him change his mind? I probably not, just based on, he talked a lot about needing to be a present father and husband, for his family. And even moving back to Slovenia, right? This guy comes from a place we haven't seen a lot of NHL players come from. And he's just been quietly a rock for the LA Kings, and maybe a little loudly he's going to go out from the NHL. I think we're going to, he might even be surprised by the reception he gets in some road buildings or from some teams as they send him off here in this final season.
I'm not the only one who's curious about if we get a retirement tour, what gifts is he going to get? That's the first thing that crosses my mind with Anze Kopitar. You mentioned Mariano Rivera. Like, he got like a surfboard, he got cowboy boots, he got like a custom bike. There were so many different gifts he got from all these different teams he visited. I want to know how creative NHL teams are going to get with Anze Kopitar if they choose to do that with him. Not just, hey, here's a commemorative stick. Like, I want someone to do like something really outrageous with Anze Kopitar. That's what I would love to see for someone who I love the way you described his career, but a very understated but amazing two-way talent, a two-time Stanley Cup champion, the first player from Slovenia to come out and play in the NHL. We're at a time right now where two of the biggest athletes in LA are from Slovenia, between Anze Kopitar and Luka Doncic. And, well, after this year, it's just going to be Luka Doncic at this point. So, yeah, I hope Anze Kopitar gets all the flowers and then some in his retirement tour.
What do you get the guy that has everything? I have trouble with gift giving, so I don't even know. Like, you make good points. I don't know what you get someone in that scenario, but I mean, at least those teams have deeper budgets than we would buying a gift for Kopitar. One of my favorite Kopitar memories was at the Sochi Olympics, Julian, and I should have looked up which team Slovenia beat, because of course I'm only going to be able to tell you half the story, but Slovenia beat, I think it might have been Slovakia at the Olympics. And I remember being in the mix zone and like Kopitar was in tears. Like, it was the most significant men's international hockey victory to that point that they'd had. And it was basically Kopitar and a bunch of players, of course, that aren't NHLers beating a team with more NHLers. So, yeah, obviously someone who's represented his country with a lot of pride. And, he was one of the guys, the reason they created that Team Europe, even in the World Cup in 2016, is because you were never going to be able to have a world where Slovenia had its own country represented in that tournament. So I don't even know what would you get him?
I'm terrible with gift giving as well. Like, I'm the type of person who, like, I love a list. Tell me what you want.
You want a registry kind of vibe.
I want a registry type vibe. Also, I found the article you wrote, February 15th, 2014, Slovenia knocking off Russia. They were trailing Russia and they came back.
Russia, wow.
I believe it was Russia. Unless I'm reading this wrong.
No, I'm sure that's correct.
Yeah.
Do I have a quote from Kopitar in there?
No, actually, I'm stupid. I think it's Slovakia.
It is Slovakia. Okay, I remembered it correctly. There you go.
Yeah, no, you're right. Sorry. There was one part of your story that had they had a game against Russia. It was very close. They didn't go on to win that game, but it was Slovakia.
This is a dangerous game. Read the lead.
Yeah. On paper, it is a 3-1 victory in a game between two countries with similar sounding names. In Slovenia, it will be remembered as a miracle. And the very first quote is from Kopitar. I guess now that we have beat Slovakia, maybe they're not going to mix us up anymore.
It's a pretty good lead, I got to say.
That's a pretty damn good lead, man.
That's always a risky game. I hate reading anything I wrote, like, really ever, but especially 10 years ago, like, because I think you do have this idea you improve as a writer. You see stories a little clearer. Mm-hmm. And so I was worried for that to be cringe, but I can live with that lead.
Who do you think succeeds Anze Kopitar as captain in LA?
I don't know if they have the player there yet. I mean, he's been the captain. Remember, Dustin Brown was a captain for their Stanley Cup wins, which is sort of a forgotten point because Kopitar by that was already sort of in the captain mold. But I don't know. I mean, maybe does Quentin Byfield grow into that? I don't think that he's at that stage yet. We'll see Kevin Fiala or
you're thinking Adrian Kempe?
Adrian Kempe obviously has an expiring contract. Maybe it's Drew Doughty. Maybe they go that road. sort of like what the Bruins did, right? Where Marchand got it for a couple seasons after it sort of passed through the line the way you'd expect with Bergeron and Chara.
You were right about Fiala, by the way. I think he's still a member of the Kings. I don't
he
know
is, yeah, but it's not who I was trying to reference Kempe.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure.
My guess is if they do it right away, it's Drew Doughty, but they might not do it right away. They might be. I think that's a tough when you've had especially when you've sort of had a really iconic type of captain. 9 years is a long time. I believe that's about where Kopitar is, 9 or 10 years as their captain. And had a lot of success. Sometimes it can be harder. Sometimes when you're just passing it off of players who didn't make the deepest mark, I think it's a little easier. So anyway,
okay, I
don't have a hot take for you there. Might take a little while. Or Doughty. Doughty's my first choice.
Yeah, Doughty was the first pick for myself too. I love how every time I put you on the spot with some of these, you're like, I don't have a hot take for you. I love how that keeps coming up a lot. I love that. I don't have a hot take for you.
I just assume you're trying to create some clip that gets me in trouble. That's what I think. So
yeah, I leave that for producer Drewski to sift through and create clips for us and extravagant episode titles that catch like wildfire out on the internet. Anyway. Are you ready to answer questions for Ask CJ, something we normally do for our first episode of the week?
Born ready.
First one from Cons. What's the funniest story you have from covering the NHL during your time covering the league?
Oh, my goodness.
The funniest story.
The funniest. I kind of feel like anything that would fall into the funniest might not even be safe for the podcast.
I was about to say, I don't know if you covered the Kodak Black incident in Florida a couple years ago.
No, but we did. I remember you and I talking about it.
We did.
I still follow Kodak Black on the socials because of that.
Oh, wow. Did you ever listen to his music?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. It's not your style, but he has a couple bops. I've always liked No Flockin', but I don't know if I mean, he's got a couple different songs. I don't know if you'd like him though.
I'm open-minded.
Not really a trap guy.
I'm not only one genre of music person, so I am open-minded. But if anything, I'm turning, I haven't in my life been into country, but I'm more into country and stuff now. So I don't know. I feel like,
who's actually into Kodak Black?
No.
Nathan McKinnon is.
That doesn't surprise me. The dog.
Yeah. He likes rap. He likes Kodak Black. He likes Gunna. I don't know. You should. Maybe I'll put you on a couple Kodak songs. So next time you ever talk to him, you could be like, I know these songs.
Funniest moment though. My goodness.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, there's lots of funny, right? There's lots of, honestly, when I think of just in my mind, I just think of sort of stories with the reporters and stuff, but I'm going to have to come back on that one. I like the question, but I don't want to give you some half-assed answer and what counts as funny? What's funny to me might not be funny to our listeners.
I mean, you have some funny stories. I think whatever's just makes us laugh, or if it just makes you laugh.
I'm gonna have to come back to you. I want to give you just because I want to give you a good story. That's a Thursday homework assignment for me. I'm coming with a story.
All right, we're saving that for Thursday.
I just don't want anyone to think I'm dodging the question. I literally just don't have I'm not having one anecdote immediately jump to mind. That's all.
Before or after stick taps, we will have CJ tell us the funniest story he has from his time covering the NHL. Muskoka Matt wants to know, is the run streak still alive? If so, how many consecutive days?
Muskoka Matt, the run streak is still alive. I even went this morning before recording our pod. And I don't normally know the number of days, but I'm closing in on a big milestone. So I am currently 28 days shy of 2,000. So I guess that puts me at 1,972 days. So October 20th, I hit 2,000 days on my running streak.
October 20th.
Which is kind of crazy because now that's 4 weeks away from today. I was almost I never wanted to, I've known that date in the back of my mind for a while, but I didn't want to keep saying it because even when you're 6 months out, that still means 6 months, you still got to run every day. But I'm now down to 4 weeks after 5.5 years. That counts as getting close.
So when you reach the 2K milestone, you're going to keep going.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you were going to say what's next, I'm going to be day 2001 is October 21st. So yeah, I have no plans to stop as long as physically I'm able to keep doing it. Still a really positive part of my day. And I was looking yesterday, I'm over 15,000 kilometers run on this streak too. So
nice.
I'm basically at about 8K a day if you average it over almost 2,000 days. So
a shining example. Just
it's not,
period.
look, it's not normal behavior. Let's call it what it is. Like it's a little strange, but it works for me. And yeah, I'm loving it.
Hey man, I commend you for being able to commit to running every day and to get to a point where, are you going to do anything to celebrate when you get to 2K?
I'm actually doing a half marathon on day 1999. There's a half marathon in Toronto. So, celebrate will be loose, but I'll probably go out for like a brunch, maybe have a beer or something, but
that's good.
Nothing too crazy. It's also my birthday that week. So it's a big week in my life, but no, nothing too crazy, honestly, because when you think about it, to do anything every day, it means every day is important, but it almost means like you never stop, right? Like there's not like a point. I don't know. I'm very grateful and appreciate doing it, but I'm not going to nothing too nuts. Put it that way.
Very fair. All right. Everything in moderation. Corey Oliver wants to know, which of these what if scenarios would be the most chaos fun for content creators? Mm-hmm. He presumes we're content creators. Number 1, Connor McDavid signs with Calgary. Number 2, Sidney Crosby traded to the Washington Capitals. Number 3, Kirill Kaprizov signs with Florida for $12 million. Or number 4, Germany versus Switzerland in the Olympic gold medal game. Most chaos fun scenario.
Oh, I actually like the spirit of this. I feel like if Kirill Kaprizov signed with Florida, but he signed for like $5 million because of tax benefits, that might be the one that breaks the internet. Like the league might literally go on fire if that happens. Because that would have ramifications, not just, if Connor McDavid signs in Calgary, obviously it's a big story and it's a big story in Alberta, but the whole league doesn't necessarily react to that. But I feel like if Kaprizov
the league would react to that, absolutely they would.
Yeah, they
during
would.
Their rival 3 hours down.
I'm going Kaprizov on some crazy tax-friendly deal, and then talking about how taxes are the only reason he got it. Would go to a place like Florida, and then the Panthers just own the Stanley Cup for the next decade. That one is that's my answer. But all those are really good submissions. The gold medal game, it's not, that will lessen the juice around it in North America, but I'm going to enjoy watching the gold medal game no matter which 2 countries playing it, because the stakes, it's pretty cool. So
presumably if we're getting Germany versus Switzerland probably beat Canada in some game, because whatever reason, Canada and Switzerland, those games have gotten so much more competitive. And then imagine the Germans knocking off America. We'd all be watching, because the 2 teams we all presume to be there maybe playing each other in the bronze
and you'd still have Leon Draisaitl and Roman Josi and Nico Hischier and, all sorts of, what we call star NHL players. So,
and Kevin Fiala.
Right. Don't get me wrong. I recognize it takes away from the major storyline in North America, but it still is a pretty good hockey story, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I'm picking McDavid signing with Calgary. That being said, we should not sleep on the idea. I don't think it's legit at all, but Sidney Crosby getting traded to the Washington Capitals to either succeed Alexander Ovechkin or to team up with Alexander Ovechkin would be I don't know if I could comprehend that. That would be insane.
I don't know if he could do it. I don't know if they could do it. It would be, because it
feels so wrong.
And I know everything's on it's not a hate sort of rivalry, but it's been a healthy, strong rivalry for a long time. I don't see it.
Congo Red wants to know, what are your favorite wedding songs?
Oh man. Everyone's going off the board today.
Yeah. There's
cheesy,
a few off the board ones.
Love songs?
Yeah, a lot of the questions were off the board today. There were a couple questions about ownership and escrow, and I was like, those aren't as fun compared to wedding questions.
I haven't been to a wedding in a long time.
Really? I get
weddings go in phases in your life.
You're right. You're at the point in your life
where most of my friends have been married, right? We could get into second wedding season at a certain point here, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, no.
That's fair. Oh man, I don't have a good wedding song. Man, I'm stumped.
Ed Sheeran.
I got a case of the Monday mornings.
I mean,
anything I like dancing to.
Anything you like dancing to.
I'm not a good dancer, but I'm an enthusiastic dancer when it comes to like a wedding kind of vibe.
So if you hear like "I Got a Feeling" by the Black Eyed Peas,
oh yeah, that song.
You do
that song I always think of. That song had its moment during the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. Like it was being played everywhere. Tonight's gonna be a good night. Yeah, so like that song gets me turned up. I'm there for that.
Okay, we might have to consider that as your official answer.
Okay.
After what day should fan bases who are coping for a Mason McTavish trade, if he remains unsigned, start having hope that a trade becomes likely?
November 1st, I'll say. Like, I think this has to, in none of the scenarios, we touched on the sort of contract corner there. Mm-hmm. None of those scenarios are at a trade standpoint now. Even if obviously negotiations aren't in a good place, I don't think any of those situations are close to that. So, but what if it got into the season, then you can imagine maybe the emotions are running a little higher and both sides could theoretically again get into more of like, I'm not going to say F you, but that kind of idea. And then maybe you get there. I still don't think that makes a lot of sense for Anaheim, quite honestly. And I know they like the player a lot. So, we're not at a stage where I think that's the likely outcome here, but it can escalate to that. I mean, that's part of what starts to get interesting when you have, players that are being kept out of camp because they have no contract is, you don't know which way it's going to go because you can only imagine the pressure and the emotions and everything are bubbling behind the scenes. And, it could lead to some outcomes, but, I don't remember actually if I take the other side of this argument. I don't remember the last time one of these, tricky contract situations led to an RFA being traded right away. So that there is that side of it too. I think more than likely they're going to sign a long-term deal and we don't have to worry about his contract for a long time. And the Ducks get back to work on trying to make the playoffs.
All right, CJ, great work as always. And we will be back later this week with more great content and stick taps. And don't forget your homework assignment, buddy.
I was going to say, and one funny story from my career.
I'm looking forward to that.
I'm going to think of one though. There's been a lot of days and a lot of rinks and a lot of conversations and a lot of jokes. So there's got to be something.
I'm adding that to the Google Doc as we speak for episode 366. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.